Many thanks to also to our partner ARE for inviting us to this event, and also to their tireless team that has been working in the background to ensure that everything works smoothly and that we have a successful event today. Also, thanks to the Lusophone Renewable Energy Association, ALER, for helping us bring the delegation of public sector participants to this event. I also like to congratulate all speakers, all moderators for the interesting session so far. I think everyone is very happy with the outcome of the discussions and interactions that happen also during the matchmaking event so far. So if you haven't done so, please participate in matchmaking sessions. It's an instrument to meet to help you establish partnerships and link also to financiers that are present in this event. And finally, thanks to the European Union, Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, and Austria for financing our program. So just a couple of invest and why we have this session about Mozambique. As usually, the best European owners that I have and operates in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, and in sub-Saharan Africa. However, in Mozambique, since 2019, we have been operating in the country window with additional support and that allows us to do more things. More importantly, it allows us to support a higher number of companies in Mozambique, but also to do other types of things, such as support C&I off-takers in investing in renewable energies, deploy a specific finance readiness support in Mozambique, so for companies that are at the early stage of development. This type of support was described yesterday by my colleague Divya in a session, and also training and coaching that we are providing to domestic financiers. We are working with 4 domestic banks in order to increase lending in local currency in Mozambique. So today we have a panel focused on the opportunities for the private sector in renewable electrification, and have a panel of public and private stakeholders that I will by introducing the first one and asking to start the first presentation about Mozambique. So, Dr. Mataveia, can you please come to on the use of energy? Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank for the opportunity that we have to share some information for energy sector in Mozambique in this important event. The government of Mozambique has a 5-year plan. We have a concrete objective for the 5-year plan to the energy sector that I would like to share in this presentation, because I believe that those objectives offer the possibility for the different companies that can invest in our country in energy sector. The 5-year plans aim to increase power generation by 600 megawatts through public and private investments, which 200 megawatts contribution will be from renewable energy and 400 megawatts from natural gas thermoelectric power. This one. Yes. Also, we have the objective to electrify all the headquarters of the administrative post through from the national grid and also from off-grid solution. We talk about mini grids and solar home systems. So we have this objective to include all the administrative posts have to be electrified in those 5 years of government program. Talking about electrification of administrative posts, it's important to share that that our country has 416 administrative posts, and in 2020 it was 135 that were not electrified, and we carry out the study, and the study indicates that 94 administrative posts have to be electrified by on-grid solution, and 41 will be from off-grid solution. So since 2020, we've been implementing this program to cover all the administrative posts. So until now, we reached to electrify 36 administrative posts, that 29 from electricity grid, on grid, and 7 from off-grid solution, where FUNAE is playing important role on off-grid solution, and our utility is playing important the access rate is expected to grow from percentage to reach 64% in this 5-year period, meaning that in 2024, our population, Mozambique, have to reach 64 rate of electrification access. We do have our national electrification strategy that we did approve in 2008. Our electrification strategy has this ambitious goal to achieve universal is in line with the goal number 7 from the Sustainable Development Goals. For universal access by 2030, our survey indicate that 60% have to be on-grid solution and 30% off-grid solution. So as you can see, we will not rely only in on-grid solution because our country is so huge and we have a very concentrated household, so it is not so economical viable to reach them in short period, to reach them from electricity from the grid. We need those off-grid solutions. Also, it is important to share with this audience that in Mozambique, we recently approved the new new electricity law, because until now we was using the old one from 1997. So the government of Mozambique approved the new electricity law in this first quarter of 2022, and is under the process for the public publication. Is already approved, but not yet public, but is under the process to be published. With the aim of adapting it to the new realities of the energy sector, some of the objectives of the new electricity law I will share. One of them is to promote the efficiency and the financial sustainability of the sector and the sectoral activities through tariff regimes based on efficient or competitive costs and prices. To ensure environmental sustainability and the increase and participation of renewable energy in the supply of electricity. So the new electricity law opened the window for more investments in renewable energy, because the old one, it was not having any focus on renewable. But the reality of the development of the energy sectors needs a concrete legal framework that will attract more investment in renewable energy, particularly in off-grid solutions. So this new law is very important because it opens a very important room for renewable energy, particularly off-grid solutions. It simplifies the procedure for authorization of mini production of electricity, where the concession contract of mini grid will have its own simplified model. The old law gives the same treatment to all levels of energy production. So with this new law, we will have a specific treatment for different levels. Also, it's important to share that in 2022, in second half of the year, we did approve a very important regulation on off-grid energy access, because we understand that this part of the the energy supply needs a specific regulation, a specific instrument to promote and to guide the investors when they come to our country to implement projects in this field. The present legal regulatory framework that promotes the participation of the private sector as an only of public initiative to achieve universal access to energy. The regulation creates a favorable environmental for the implementation of renewable energy off-grid projects and contribute to the universal access by 2030. Under this regulation, we will improve more specific instruments to implement the regulation. My colleague, Dr. Telma from the regulator, Mozambique Agency for Authority for Regulation, she will talk more about this subject. Also, it's important to share that on promotion of renewable energy project implementation, we are under implementation ProLayer with support from AFD. We conducted the preparation and execution of technical, economical, and environmental studies prior to definition to the applicable commercial and regulatory terms and conditions. Under ProLayer, we will implement 4 projects. The first one is Dondo, 40 megawatts peak solar, and we have also Lixinga in Niassa province, 40 megawatts as well, Manji in Tete province, 40 megawatts as well, and Namache in Maputo province, 40 megawatts, but this in Namache is wind project. As you can see, in the right side, we share the invitation for the pre-qualification of Dondo project. So the tender for the implementation of the first project, Dondo project, solar power plant, we launched and we already selected the winner company. At this moment, we are under process of concession contract negotiation, and other negotiations are going on with the utility EDM. And this year, we will launch the tender for Manji and Niassa. Another important program that we would like to share with this audience is GET.FIT, Global Energy Transfer Feed-in Tariff Program. This program also has intention to promote the implementation of renewable energy projects that are on grid. It's supported by KfW. The total generation capacity is 130 megawatts. The first phase will install 32 megawatts. The project will be from 4 to 15 megawatts each in 2023. This program is financing the following components: a viability gap fund mechanism, a grid integration facility, capacity development facilities. And thank you very much. Asante sana. Obrigado. And I believe that in Mozambique we have a lot of opportunities for private companies to come and invest in energy sector, particularly providing off-grid solution. We as a government, we in charge of creating environmental condition that will attract more and more investment. We are trying to create more incentives. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mataveia, for presenting the strategy of the government of Mozambique. This new electricity law that is expecting to attract more private sector investment in the country, and also for these encouraging words to the audience here. Who in the audience is interested in investing in Mozambique, or is interested in developing projects in Mozambique? Very few. So we are here we have very few companies, very few participants here interested in Mozambique, or with activities in Mozambique. So perhaps you're coming here to learn what Mozambique has to offer. So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Matavel from MIREME, the energy regulator in Mozambique. She will have a presentation for you on regulatory framework for off-grid access. And well, Dr. The floor is yours.
Thank you, José. Thank you very much for this opportunity. As Directora Marcelina said before, Mozambique is a country with a lot of opportunities in the energy sector development. And we will focus here the off-grid solutions, mainly the regulatory framework that we are creating now for incentivize the development of projects on off-grid. I remember that Dr. Marcelina mentioned that the studies carried out by the government says that a huge part of the development of projects would be guided through the development of projects in off-grid. So in order to cover and give the necessary legal framework for the off-grid solutions, the government took a reform, started a reform last year in order to create the necessary environmental conditions to the private sector investments. Being a regulator, we will focus our presentation on the regulatory perspective. ARENE, the Energy Regulatory Authority, was created in 2017. However, it comes in operational around 2019, and ARENE has a mandate on regulation, supervision, inspection, as well as on representation. Talking about the regulation mandate, ARENE act as procuring authority. It means that all the tender process related to a project will be conducted by ARENE. The ministry will inform ARENE that wants to launch a tender, and ARENE will take the necessary measures under the procuring process in order to conduct the process up to the signing of the concession contract. ARENE also on regulation is responsible for set and approve the tariffs, is also responsible to promote the free competition, prevent and take the necessary measures in order to give environmental conditions under a fair competition in the market. Under the supervision and the inspections, ARENE guides the assure the compliance with the terms and conditions of the concession contract. It means that ARENE takes the monitoring and evaluation of the concession contracts. ARENE also issue administrative instructions to the regulatory authorities and apply fines if there is a need under the sanctioning powers. In terms of representation, ARENE establish and cooperate with the other regulators around the world. Recognizing that the current electricity law that is under revision, recent approved it was recently approved the new electricity law. However, before before December 2021, even during the process of revision of electricity law, the government approved the new regulatory framework for investment on the renewable, on the off-grid solutions. Because the actual legislation is dated for so long, to 1997, as well as its regulation, including the PPP law that was applied for this kind of project. So recognizing that there was a need to improve the legal framework, because the energy and renewable energy has a different dimension today that it was in 1997, and the actual PPP law also gives a huge fees and charges for the private investment. Issues like as energy service were not regulated, and there was also a need to assure that the using of energy for productive use is very well regulated and the investment are also protected. The need to give a differentiation on the tariff for on-grid and off-grid, and also regulate issues as certification of equipment, as well as the necessary conditions for commercial operation. So these are part of the motivations under the regulatory framework that we can see here on this slide. Also associated with the Mozambique commitment to the universal access by 2030, and the need to implement the national electrification strategy that also reflects the Mozambique commitment on the universal access. The need to boost the private participation with necessary attractive legal framework, and also, of course, regulated the mini grid using maritime renewable energy as well as the energy service. So this legal framework approved by Decree 93/2021 brings the mini grids as well as energy service. On mini grids, it's important to note that we have three different categories. The first category of mini grids goes from 1 megawatt up to 10 megawatt. The second category from 151 kilowatts to 1 megawatt, and the third category goes up to 150 kilowatts. In order to bring the facilitation that we are talking here in terms of procedures, the idea is to, from the smaller capacity, the issues of processing, all the granting will be more facilitated, and Dr. Marcelina also talked about the simplified contracts that we are also bringing here. It doesn't make sense that we have a project of 40 megawatts, and a small project up to 150 kilowatts have the same concession contract. So we are bringing here the possibility to have a differentiated concession contract, more simplified with less huge and also fees in order to facilitate investment. And the exemption of some licensing also under the third category. The project will be subject to the electrification plan because it's important to align the off-grid and the on-grid activities. So there is a need the government will approve the electrification plan for off-grid and will be granted as well as up to public tender under the procurement process as well by a request for interested parties. The concession will be granted by the minister that will approve the concession procedures, and ARENE will instruct all the process for granting the concession using a specific mechanism as well as technologies taking into account the particularities of the rural areas. There is a need to fulfill with the performance guarantee up to 5% of investments that also will be determined taking into account the specificities of the area. In order to solve the competing orders, ARENE will detail and regulate this issue. The concessionaire has the obligation to take a local content plan according with the location, category, and complexity of the project, aiming to stimulate also the development of the communities. There is a need to provide from concessionaire. There is a need to provide improvement and a monitoring of their project in order to facilitate ARENE to have the energy cadastre for the off-grid projects. In terms of obligation, also the concessionaire has the obligation to fulfill the period of 18 months to start the construction after the concession, the granting of the concession, and within a period of 48 months for hydro and 36 months for other sources as wind or solar, the concession should also start the commercial operation. In terms of energy service, that are the ones that we are very well familiar with, I mean the solar home system, the process is more simplified. ARENE will guide all the process to register the operator, and will provide a certificate of register that will last for 5 years that can be renewed. There are specific obligations taking into account the kind of activity. There is a need to present a solid waste management plan, comply with safety standards for equipment, and also provide the necessary information in order to allow ARENE to monitor the evaluation of the specific activity. There is a possibility to have on the same place a mini grid as well as the energy service activity. And the registration is subject to expire or to be cancelled, and there is a simplified and online registration process. We understand that this regulation is not enough itself to have the activity going on. So there is a need to have complement regulations that are in process of elaboration. So we are considering to have the concession regulation itself, the tariff regulation for the off-grid, interconnection regulation for off-grid, the sanctioning readjustment regime, the quality standard and safety regulation, as well as the environmental aspects regulation. So we may say that a part of the decree that approved the regulatory framework for the off-grid activity, we should continue to elaborate other ones that we already started. That's why we are bringing here to share with you the regulations that are under development. Doesn't mean that this will be enough. Of course, there are a lot of procedures that should be regulated in order to allow the appropriated implementing of the legal framework. Muito obrigada, Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Telma Mataveia. I hope now the best clear Mozambique is ready for private sector investment in both off-grid areas. The presentation from the regulator, I think it demonstrates the work that is being done, especially on allowing for mini grid developers to come into the country to operate mini grids across the vast country with the country is big, but also the population is very dispersed, so it's quite a challenge to electrify Mozambique. So I would like now to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Filipe Mondlane from FUNAE, the Energy Fund, and also at the same time I'll ask you a question, Dr. Mozambique has made progress in access to energy in recent times. However, the challenges and the opportunities are significant. In FUNAE's perspective, on contribution of access to energy, what are the FUNAE's perspectives on accessing energy and the contributing of the institution of the fund to this objective?
Thank you for this question. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Filipe Mondlane, as the board advisor of the FUNAE. FUNAE is a public entity under the Ministry of Mineral Resources and Energy, with mandate to increase access of energy, particularly in rural areas. We are doing 3 pillars. The first one is regarding the electricity access, and the second one regarding the access of oils such kerosene, petrol, and diesel. And the third one is regarding the efficiency energy, for example, the improved tools or other technologies that seems very important on rural areas in order to contribute in all chain in quality in access of energy service. Regarding the question that you've been raised, first I'd like to share that under National Electrification Strategy, we divided 2 areas. One is on grid side, where it's expected 70% of access through the grid, especially densification and also extension. And for off grid, we expect solutions. One is on grid, we expect around 1,300 connections by 2030. For solar systems, the different alternatives is around 2 million connections, but this market is huge, which means that it is affect solar systems on off-grid sites and also on-grid sites, especially the electrification approach, whereas the grid not reach the communities, which means for solar grids for solar systems is around at least 5 million connections. Regarding the mini grids, the The point is we are working with our utility in order to see the best way to promote the service energy, especially where we have a community far away, starting from 30 kilometers from the grids, to use the mini grids. So it comes to solve or to fit where is not feasible for mini grids or it's not feasible at the moment for on-grid solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mondlane. Next speaker, the CEO of SolarWorks, a company that has been in Mozambique for already 5 years, right? Or more?
More, yeah.
More. Well, on this, with the same logic, please introduce yourself, and also I would like to ask you, what's your opinion of the government work to facilitate access to energy in Mozambique, and what could be further done to promote private sector investment in off-grid areas, and perhaps you could share also your experience from your last 5 years in the country, and the challenges that how you managed to overcome, and now being a successful company in Mozambique.
Okay. Well, I'll try to do it as short as possible, José. So my name is Arnoud. I started SolarWorks in 2008, 2009. We've always have focused on Southern Africa. We started actually with our own products. We were a real product-minded company. And for all kinds of reasons, it was only in 2016 that we took the decision to become a distribution and service company. And Mozambique was the country that we knew best in Southern Africa. So that's why we started there. We saw a big potential. And it has turned out to be a good choice, although the last 3 years were not so easy. So it's only since 2017 was our first full year. So the first sales were done in 2017. And before that, we had smaller products for about 6 years. So we've been around for quite a while. In terms of a little bit of footprint, we are now except Cabo Delgado, although we aim to go there if security allows it in the second part of this year. We have presence in all provinces. I think we must have installed around 100,000 systems in Mozambique, and basically keep on focusing on our service footprint. So we don't think it can be done without proper physical presence in the areas where we sell. So that's a little bit of background. In terms of the government, it's always easy to say what the government needs to improve. So I actually want to take the opportunity to say that the government in Mozambique has been really forward-looking. The plan that there is for 2030, I think, is great. It's really good that it has such a dominant place in even the daily news. So I really think that credit should go there for that to the government in Mozambique. That doesn't take away the fact that on a practical level we still have our own issues. It's not so easy. So most of my stories will be from a practical experience, right? That's what we do. That's, I guess, also maybe the value that we can bring. But having import duties from one day to the other triple while you're in the middle of a recovery from first the cyclone, the pandemic, and the consequences of the pandemic doesn't help, right? So that would be something to really look. Okay, could we not maybe do something about duties in general? Same for VAT. It has been widely proven, I think, in Africa. Once you take away VAT or at least reduce it in duties, the distribution of solar home systems, small and big, goes much faster. So that would really be a request to, together with ENGIE and other friends in Mozambique, to sound and see what we can do. We also understand, of course, that it's income for the government, right? It's not something that you can just do from one day to the other. I would also say, but it goes a little bit far maybe to deal with it now, but In terms of the financial regulations, it has not always been easy to get loans in place that come from abroad, that then you need to pay these people back. That has been quite a challenge, so to say. I don't know what the solution there is. It's not my field, but I think there is a bit of room for improvement. Then I guess where maybe most of my experience is the last 5 years. What have we learned? I think most of all, so first of all, we are profitable. So if there's investors here in the room, you can distribute solar energy to rural areas in Mozambique and make a profit. The last 3 years we were not profitable, and this is also part of life in many countries in the world. So it's not Africa or Mozambique specifically, that things don't always turn out to be like you had in your spreadsheet, right? But then it's for us to show to investors that we can deal with it. So we recovered quite well from, which would not have been happening without the help of some of NGOs. I don't know if GIZ is here. A big thank you from all of our employees. The programs that they have put in place have really helped us to get through COVID and the consequences of the cyclone Idai. So the first learning is that the potential is there. The market is really, really big, and that's not going away. That's there, and I would invite everybody that wants to invest in Mozambique to come, because it's basically unlimited. With 100,000 systems, we only scratch the surface. It's nothing basically compared to the potential. Then more maybe real learnings. I need to speak a little bit. So it's scalable, but it's not fast scalable, right? So you can scale from one province to the other, and we made that mistake as well. You open an office and you sign a contract for the rent, you hire some people and you start selling. That's not a problem. But then to make sure that people pay, that if they have a problem that you can help them, that's a completely different story. So the growth, whether we like it or not, it won't be like a hockey stick. It's a nice smooth line that goes up, and with good cost control, we have now shown that it's profitable. But we thought also, very honest, that it would go much faster. But I don't see that. If you want to be good at service, I don't see that happening. Look, there's more learnings about the help of NGOs that we have had that I already mentioned. PAYGO, only PAYGO. PAYGO is the recipe to spreading payments for an asset that you cannot pay upfront is distribution for energy for a lot of people. But only PAYGO, especially in an environment where things can happen, right? Whether it's a natural disaster or a sudden devaluation of the currency or a drought that has all kinds of consequences. It means that all that money that you borrow to purchase your stock, which you do in dollars, becomes a problem, right? So only PAYGO is the solution, but only PAYGO for us as a company that wants to be profitable is not the way to go. I don't know if that would go for every country, but in Mozambique, it's a big learning for us to add also larger systems. So we electrify hospitals, government buildings, tourist accommodation with systems that are from 1 kilowatt peak solar panel capacity until 15 kilowatt peak. That's a proper capacity, right? And everything in between. So we basically capitalized on that service footprint that we built up with PAYGO to do now much more than only PAYGO. But the main reason is financially, it is too dangerous for us, has proven to be too dangerous to only do PAYGO. So we became a much more mixed company. And the last learning, if I may, is people. Except for one, we have sent all expats home. I think it was after 2 or 3 years that we really noticed that our call center was nothing but a pool of talents. But you need to actively nurture it, right? Is that the word in English? So we've put a lot of effort in making sure that we identify people that are clearly talented. And it's nothing else than what any other company does in the world, or I think should do, is to really make sure that every 6 months in the board we go through a list of people that we think are the talents for the future. And it has now resulted in basically complete local management, except for one. So we are also active in Malawi. I think we have fixed employees about 300 and then about 700 agents. 2 of those are from outside the countries where we operate. And I really want to emphasize that Mozambique, but also Malawi, is full of talented people. But you need to put an effort in it to let it come out just as anywhere else in the world. But that, I would say, is from all these things, the biggest learning.
Okay. Thank you very much, Arnoud. It was long, but I think everyone appreciated your insights. Many thanks. Okay, so final but not the least, the country director of ENGIE, Mr. Emidio. What are for you main opportunities for a company like ENGIE and Access and Mozambique? What first support could your investments and your efforts in the country? And if you'd like to also delve a little bit like Arnoud did on your learnings, please feel free to do so.
Thank you for the question. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for the invitation for the event. First of all, ENGIE Energy Access, my colleague from the global team, our CFO, yesterday introduced a bit. Not sure if everyone attended. It's a merger of 3 previous companies, Phoenix International, that focused mainly on small solar home systems from 10 watts to 50 watts. And Mobisol, that it's also a solar home systems company, but with slightly bigger systems all the way up to 200 watts. And ENGIE, which is an ENGIE innovation project that works or specializes in mini grids. And with this merger, we now are able to provide services and products all the way from 10 watts to mini grids. And we are currently a strong player in mini grids in the African market in 9 of the countries that we're working on. And we really intend to invest heavily in Mozambique in building mini grids. So that would be the future-looking aspect in terms of investments we want to double down on in Mozambique. As for our story, it starts 3 years ago. The middle of 2019, we opened as Phoenix International at the time. We've grown pretty fast. We have over 100,000 customers currently, and one thing that Arnold said that it's really resonating is that the right team and the right talent is key to making this happen. We had also the benefit of leveraging on the experience of the previous years in other markets from Phoenix International to try and make the right choices and tweaking the right pricing and making sure that we have the right tools in place to really succeed at this. But a key factor was also the support that we had as soon as we turned to 2020. When we joined the market, there was no grant facility, so our pricing was really high for the average rural customer in Mozambique. I'm talking about $5 a month for the entry-level kit, the most basic one. And with that, the addressable market was about 20%. And even then, we saw one of the learnings there was that in terms of default rates or in terms of customers that couldn't really go all the way to complete their loans at that price point, we're talking about 25 to 35%. Then we got the support of GIZ with the RBF programs that they started. and also SNV and the Brilho program. And we use that grant value and transfer it to the customers, making our product a lot more affordable. And at that more affordable pricing, which is about $3.5 at this stage, we have about 19% of customers struggling and other customers being more active. So one big learning is our customers in Mozambique are highly, highly price sensitive. And one of the things that Arnold mentioned was we have just recently experienced a shift in duty clearance amounts that we have to pay from 7.5% to 20%. And that came as a shock because, our business plan and everything else was planned around 7.5%, which means we have to raise prices to our customers, and we know what that means. But at the same time, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because all the conversation that we had and the government has been presenting to us with the new off-grid regulation and the intention to give fiscal incentives to promote the sector. I'm hopeful that we will get to a point very soon where this is no longer a challenge and we can even more rapidly access these communities. So pricing is a learning, talent is another one. The second one is, the third one would be in terms of just the addressable market and the potential that is there. Just for reference, we've used some of the support that we've gotten during the COVID season. The GIZ launched a COVID Plus window funded by the European Union, where we use that grant value to simulate what would be the impact of making a price point where it's a mix of the current normal RBF grants that we have in the country, plus full VAT and duty exemptions from the government. At that price point, we've doubled sales in the south, the richest part of the country, and we've increased sales by 800% in the central and northern regions of the country, which are the most populous, the least electrified, and the poorest areas of the country. And those customers now are trending towards 10 to 15% default rates, which is amazing. It's way better than what we expected for a country like Mozambique. So that's another learning. This combination of donor partners, the government putting fiscal incentive tools available in the sector would really accelerate things. We've reached 100,000 customers in 3 years, but we could be doing a lot more than that in 1 year, given that kind of support and that kind of platforms. And just from a forward-looking perspective, now that we have all this capability as a company to build not just small solar home systems, but solar business systems from 1 kilowatt to 10 kilowatts for clinics and schools, restaurants, and also mini grids for entire communities. Our country is largely dispersed, and we know that there will be a huge challenge to have EDM electrify all of these communities on grid and even off grid. As you electrify communities with mini grids, you will still struggle to get everyone. So we have a good combination of products and capacity to really help with the off grid, both in terms of mini grid solutions as well as solar home systems, which I'm aware that solar home systems are a transitional solution. They are not the definite life-changing economic development product, but they are what we need for this stage. And as we grow into more mini grid and bigger system solutions, I'm sure that we will have the impact we want as a company, which is rural productive use and development, and obviously as a consequence for the country. So that's where I see the future for our business.
Okay, thank you very much, Emidio. Dr. Marcelina, you've closed your presentation inviting companies and investors to come to Mozambique. Maybe can you quickly explain where you see the opportunities for the private sector to be involved in the off-grid electrification in the country?
Thank you for the question that you raised up. First of all, it's important to emphasize that in Mozambique, we have places that only make sense to electrify through off-grid solutions. Those off-grid solutions can be mini grids or solar home systems. But the intention is to make the local economy development, contribute through electrification to the development of the economy. So we believe that some households can start with the solar home system, but we expect them to move for a mini grid and another time to be reached by electricity from the national grid. So it's a dynamic process. So in this dynamic process, we see a lot of opportunities for the private enterprise, because it will not be in short or medium term that they will be reached by electricity from the grid, particularly in those rural areas that are very far from the grid. Also, this exercise that we have been doing, those reforms in legal framework, they are very important because they create concrete, specific rules to attract more investment in off-grid solutions. So this is an opportunity. As the colleague from the ENGIE company mentioned, in Mozambique we have been also working in order to come up with fiscal incentives, because we understand that if we don't put any kind of incentive, so the majority of the population in rural areas they cannot afford expensive systems, because if we don't put fiscal incentives, meaning that the companies will buy expensive and the final product will be expensive for our population. For us as a government is not what we would like to see, because we want to achieve universal access by 2030. So this subject is under control, we are doing something in regarding to this subject. Also, it's important to mention that in rural areas, it's important to combine electrification with the productive use of energy. So this is an important opportunity for the companies. It's a very important opportunity because the companies, they can provide services that can contribute for the economic development. And with economic development, people will consume more and more electricity. So it's a market opportunity. So it's what I would like to comment for the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. So I see here that we see challenges being made from one side to the other. Now, Arnoud and Emidio, I think it's important also to work on this challenge of economic development focusing on in productive uses of energy where you're working. Dr. Telma, Mozambique has enormous potential for renewable energy. The energy resources are huge. We have the gas, but here renewable energies. And you explained all the regulatory framework that ARENE is working on. How do you believe this will contribute to increased access to energy in rural areas?
Thank you, José. My question will be very close to, my answer will be very close to Marcelina's also, because the regulatory framework that is being designed try to specify different approaches for the off-grid. Try to bring solutions for off-grid, and we are not, let's say, inventing. We are benchmarking, we are designing, and we are seeing the experience of other countries, mainly African countries that also are organizing their energy sector. As I mentioned before on my presentation, not only the in place regulation that was approved, but we are bringing here tariff regulation for grid interconnection. That is one of the main concerns for the investors. What will happen if the grid arrives? When the grid arrives, how the investors are protected also. We will design this regulation in order to make sure that the investors also have their investment very well protected. And also there is a need to make sure that the equipment that will be imported mainly on the energy service, I mean on the solar home, have the right certified and are appropriated to be also used on the areas that the investors want to use. The commercial operation, commercial aspects for the off-grid will be different from the on-grid. We are talking about rural areas with the different particularities that we need to understand. The investor will not have the same opportunities as the investor for the on-grid. So we are trying to bring a kind of a legal framework with respecting the investor, but also taking into account the particularities of the rural areas. And the good thing of the off-grid approach is that it will not touch only with the electrification itself, but with the development of communities. When we talk about the local content on the off-grid, we can see a lot of opportunities here. We can see that the involvement of the community will be more closer than the on-grid, for instance. The productive use of energy, it's another thing that is very well interesting when we're talking on off-grid. I don't know if I raised the...
I think it's
Thank you.
very good also insight on how the government, the regulator, has been working on the drafting of the regulatory framework, and how it also has the interests of the private sector in mind. Emidio, what has been ENGIE's experience in international funding in Mozambique, and what are your expectations in terms of how financiers could help you grow? And because we don't have much time and we would like to ask also the audience for some questions, can you please answer in just a couple of minutes?
Thank you. Well, we've, in terms of financing or funding, we've got a lot of support, as I mentioned, from donors in terms of grant funding, over $10 million to this point, and that will lead to about 150,000 connections. in this period of 3.5 years, more or less. And I expect us to be able to do a lot more in the coming years, given the regulatory environment. But in terms of finance coming from international partners other than our main investor, we haven't had yet any debt financing or equity or any non-grant funding, and that has a few reasons. So one of them is the fluctuation of the local currency, and the other one are terms. And this happened also locally. The commercial banks don't necessarily have yet a huge focus on the sector in terms of instruments and solutions for this sector, as well as the conditions are non-competitive versus what we get already from international funding solutions. So we're looking forward, obviously, to as we scale our business, to get partners who can provide us with funding in local currency, and with that really expand to everything that I've mentioned before.
Thank you, Emidio. Arnoud, you've faced several crises in the last 3 to 4 years. We had the cyclones, COVID, the logistics nightmare. How did this impact your business? How did the market respond? And how did your investors react?
Yeah, so we were supposed to be profitable in 2019, right? So then EDI came along. I don't know how many people here are aware of what happened there, but it was all our offices in the area have been changed into shelters. It was really bad. So especially like from a human perspective, it was very tough. Then the pandemic hit us, so we have a very community-based sales model. Well, you were not allowed anymore to basically move around like before, let alone do the gatherings or several gatherings usually. So we couldn't really sell anymore. The call center had to be done completely different. Tried to, in Mozambique, to have a virtual call center with people sitting at home suddenly instead of in a call center. And then the supply chain. So to make it short, I know that we are pressed for time. Without EDP, one of our investors, Persistent, one of our investors, and the local organizations like GIZ, most notably, but also ACF and EP, I would not have been sitting here telling you a story that we are profitable in 2022. Impossible. So it was really because those parties believing in the long-term potential of Mozambique that we are still here.
Thank you, Arnoud. Dr. Mondlane, what are the opportunities that FUNAE has for the market, in particular for companies here in the panel, but also present in this room?
Thank you for this question. First, as you mentioned, the market is huge, and what you need so far is to address some barriers. First one of is the fiscal incentives that we need. What I can share with you is that the exemption of VAT and duties is underway, and also we have different windows. For example, for solar home system, we have a GIZ, as I mentioned, and also from the Brillo. And the next year will have another windows for that, comes from the World Bank. At this moment, as I'm talking with you, we have a process to hire a fund manager in order to manage the Windows facilities for all the market. It's around $26 million for 4 years. For mini-grid sites, we have also the Brillo also support the mini-grids. And potentially also we have the BGFA, Beyond Fund Grid for Africa, for Mozambique, also coming to support this market from mini grids. We have the third one that's still under preparation from KfW, which also support the mini grids on the Mozambique. Both of them are also integrated hybrid approach, which means that in all space that will develop mini grids is still available to solar season, where it's difficult to reach the households through mini grids. It's the thing that we can share so far. One other thing that we'd like to add it is for local bank, and they're also looking for this market. We have one BCI that's as a credit line for renewable products. And it's also from World Bank, we are still working on this kind of solution, provide loans for the local companies that will dealing on this market. I believe that also will be available on the next year, maybe in the second half of the year. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Mondlane. I now invite the audience to ask questions to the panel. Yeah, please, the lady.
Thank you. So my name is Nema Shayo, and I'm the energy advisor from the Norwegian Embassy here in Dar es Salaam. A couple of questions. First of all, it's on the productive use. And I just wanted to get a little bit of a sense from a practical point of view. What has been your experience, especially from the mini-grid sector? Are you promoting productive use? And is this part of your model? And this is also related to the issue of when you say pay as you go is sort of a difficult model. So are you kind of trying to develop a different model that would be able to assure you repay back of these investments? If you can expand a little bit on that segment. And then the next question was on the productive use. Also, I would like to know from FUNAE, from the electrification agents, whether you also have some plans, given that you're the national electrification agents. Are you planning anything on productive use? If you could share an experience from your side. On the other question was on the regulator. I found a little bit interesting hearing from your side that part of your mandate is on the procurement as well. So from a regulatory perspective, don't you see this as a conflict of interest? I mean, when you're procuring on the same side and regulating the developers at the same time. So if you can expand a little bit on that segment. But otherwise, it's very impressive to hear those good opportunities from Mozambique.
Thank you very much. Arnoud, do you want to start?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about productive use. So for us, that is the biggest opportunity for the coming years. There's 3.2 million farmers, I believe, in Mozambique, of which 95% are smallholder farmers. And those people need proper irrigation equipment. Now, the problem is, how are we going to do that? How can we bring a pump that they can afford? So we think we are close to a solution for that. But I would say that it's one of the core pillars, one of the three core pillars of our coming 5-year plan is to make productive use for the masses. So for the 3 million smallholder farmers and the 380,000 fishermen that Mozambique has. Because there I think we can also do something with productive use. The key is it is much more complicated than a solar home system, both in terms of support and convincing the customer and technically, as well as the business model that makes it actually possible to make it affordable. It's less straightforward, but it will come. I think it's the big opportunity for Mozambique, but actually for most countries in Africa.
Thank you. Regarding the productive uses of energy in our mini grids are also available. The approach that we use before we install the mini grids, we start with the survey in order to understand the demand of energy. And what you're doing so far is, for example, identify households and also identify the economic activities. Where is it possible, we connect after they install the mini-grids. Mostly is regarding the
Milling?
mostly is in milling, and in some parts also we integrate the irrigation systems. But the approach we use, we see the entire demand on sites and see what the potential, because as you know, the mini grids has some limitation regarding the where we find the loads for each, for example, potential activities. So where is the available, we'll integrate on the mini grids. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Telma, do you want to answer the last question?
Thank you. Yes, by the law, ARENE has the role of procuring authority, and at the same time, ARENE monitor and supervise the contracts. I mean the activities of the regulatory entities. On my point of view, I don't see any conflict of interest because there is a need to have an institution that assure that all the process that will finish with the concession, that because who granted the concession is the minister, is not the regulator. The minister grant the concession. I mean, the minister instructs ARENE to launch the tender. And what ARENE does is only to conduct the process to make sure with the compliance with all the legislation aspects and procuring legal aspects in order to make sure that that process was transparent, that process was fulfilling the law. And at the end of the day, ARENE takes the process to minister to say yes or say no or give any recommendation to align with the necessary legal aspects. ARENE does not grant any license, does not grant any concession. At the other end, there is a need to make sure that the regulated entities fulfill with the law and the development of their activities. That's why ARENE comes to the scene again and then do the inspection, do the monitor of the activities that each concession or licensees are under their activity are fulfilling. So on my point of view, I don't see any conflict of interest. ARENE doesn't grant, only make sure that the process fulfill the necessary and the requirements that the law oblige.
Okay, thank you all for the answers. We unfortunately only have time for two more quick questions and two quick answers. So I think the gentleman here in the second row.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Tajeli Rio, Energy Advisor from Norwegian Embassy in there. And my question is, I would like to know the current installed capacity and future demand in terms of generation, but a long-term demand of electricity in terms of generation. And the sub-question again is, what do ARENE think of net metering as a part of decentralized renewable energy access within Mozambique? Thanks.
Okay. Maybe we can also ask this gentleman to ask the question.
My name is Victor Kitange from the Common Secretariat. My question is to what's her name?
From Ministry of Energy?
Yes.
Dr. Marcelina.
Yeah, Dr. Marcelina. She talks about the dynamic growth of the sector. The question then is, within the regulatory framework, has there been consideration in terms of making sure that when the grid reaches the areas where a private sector has set up a mini grid and their market is suddenly cannibalized by the grid, would they be compensated?
Okay, thank you. I think that detail was mentioned by Dr. Telma in the representation. That's something that is ongoing.
I'm talking
and
about cannibalization, not about the issue of the fiscal incentive.
No. What happens when the grid arrives to a mini grid? Correct?
Yes. And
yes, that is being addressed. It's under drafting. It's an instrument that is being under drafting by the government. Okay. Right. Dr. Marcelina, would you like to answer the question on installed capacity, and perhaps also on the net metering question?
The installed capacity of electricity generation in Mozambique is around 2,000 megawatt and 300 megawatt, around that figure, because during the long period we have hydropower domination, the electricity market matrix. That is 2035 from Kawara Bassa electricity generation. And recently we have been able to implement a gas-fired power plant, particularly in the south of the country. We have Citergy in Maputo province, we have Kuvaninga in Chokwe, we have Central Thermic at Maputo, and now we are coming up with Temane also from gas-fired power plant. So we are diversifying our energy matrix. Also, we do have solar ones in Mokuba, in the center of the country, and also Metoro in the north of the country, in Cap Delgado. So we are diversifying our energy matrix. As I mentioned in the presentation, this 4 years period of governance, we will add 600 more in our energy matrix. That 200 will be from renewable energy and 400 from gas-fired power plant. Thank you. But also, another question.
On net metering. There was a question on net metering.
I didn't get that one.
Yes. What's your... Sorry? Net metering. Net metering. See,
you want to comment?
If I got correctly your question, we want to know the vision of the regulator on the net metering, isn't it? So it's an interesting approach, and we are considering also under our regulation. I think I'm not sure if in the electricity law, the new one, something there written, but we will see when it is published. But it's something that we are considering. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your answers. My colleagues here in the panel, thank you very much for coming here and for sharing the objectives of the government, the regulator, but also from two of the biggest players in the off-grid market in Mozambique. I think we really have to thank them all for their insights, for the lessons learned that they have shared with us. So. And again, thank you very much, you all, for coming here. And I'll pass the Nicola, please.
No, it was very interesting. I think it was excellently moderated, very interesting from the panelists. Maybe we want to repeat who's now interested in investing in Mozambique after all this panel. I hope we have increased. Well, no, we have increased. Nothing. It's time for lunch, which is always a good moment. We are back at 2, so it's not, you cannot take the siesta. Back at 2, and we continue with a very interesting market, which is Uganda. So I hope you will, to see you soon. Thank you very much. Está muito bem feito. Bravo. Que a foto, esto está nos pilla, el típico que nos pilla. But you make the point. Right?